Hi everybody, it's Terry Ryder from Hotspotting, bringing you my regular weekly feature, which is called Hotspot of the Week at this time every Tuesday evening. And tonight I'm going to focus on a particular location within the city of Perth in Western Australia. Before I talk about the specific location that I want to highlight, I'd like to just talk a little bit about the Perth market. Perth's been through a downturn, as many of you will know. But it's now showing increasing signs of moving into a recovery phase. Some people remain unconvinced, and some people just think that Perth's not a very good place to invest. And I think people, as property investors, tend to have very short memories. Those who have observed the 5 years of uplift in places like Sydney and Melbourne often tend to think, well, these are the best places to buy in Australia, that they're the perennial leaders on capital growth. But when you see research going back 20 and 30 years, you realise that actually it's not the case. Sydney has actually very seldom been a market leader on capital growth over time in Australia. In fact, PIPA, the Property Investment Professionals of Australia, has recently published some research going back 30 years, and they divided the last 30 years into 6 5-year periods and showed which cities had the greatest price growth in those periods. And Sydney, only in the most recent 5-year period, has been number one. It's the only time that Sydney has been a market leader any time in the last 30 years. But Perth has actually been an outstanding performer. In fact, when you divide the last 30 years into those 6 5-year periods, the single strongest performance of any city in any 5-year period was actually Perth. And that happened, let me just check, the 5 years from 2003 to 2007 conclusive. The Perth house prices rose 140%, which is the single strongest performance on price growth that any city in Australia has delivered in the last 30 years. It's not the only time that Perth's shown good price growth. There are other 5-year periods where Perth has been a strong market, but that's the number one performance that we've seen from a capital city market in Australia any time in the last 30 years. So Perth has done it before, and I've no doubt that Perth will be a strong growth market again. It's starting to show signs of it now. And within the city of Perth, one of those areas that's starting to come strong, and what we look at with our price predict index is patterns with sales volumes, how many houses and apartments are being sold, comparing quarter by quarter by quarter to see patterns of growth or decline. And one of the areas that has stood out in recent times in terms of showing a pattern of uplift, in other words recovery, is the City of Cockburn in the Perth metropolitan area. So it's just a little bit south of the Perth CBD, the various suburbs, 25 or so kilometres south of the CBD, close to the port of Fremantle. And this particular local government area is actually a very strong population growth area. One of the reasons for that is that a lot of its land has been traditionally industrial, and in recent times a lot of that land has been rezoned and repurposed for modern residential. And that's one of the reasons why it's been a particular population growth area, and it's projected to continue to grow strongly its population as more and more land is repurposed for residential. So we're particularly taking notice of it because a number of its suburbs have a strong pattern of revival just recently, so it's come across our radar screens. There's plenty of big projects happening there, generating activity and jobs and demand for real estate, and I'll talk about them in a little while. Excuse me a minute, we have an interruption. So firstly, what we do with our location reports, you can go to the hotspotting.com.au website and get the location report for the City of Cockburn. The first thing we look at is the underlying economy, because that's always so pivotal in terms of what's happening with property markets anywhere. One of the things about this particular local government area is that it's got a lot of major jobs nodes or as close to them. There's quite a bit of industry in or near this particular local government area. The Kwinana precinct is a renowned industrial area. You've also got the Australian Marine Complex at Henderson, which is one of the largest shipbuilding precincts in Australia, and there are others. So there's plenty of those sort of industrial type jobs nodes not too far away. You've also got in close proximity the Murdoch University and Hospital precinct, which includes the Murdoch University and the Fiona Stanley Hospital and some other major medical and educational facilities. So that's also a good thing to be proximate to. So all these things are important in terms of the desirability of this particular location is for people to live, because people like to live as close as they can to where they're working or studying, in the case of the university, the Murdoch University complex. The property market has come to our attention because, as I say, we monitor quarterly sales activity, and the Cockburn local government area has a number of suburbs showing uplift in that regard. For example, the suburb of Spearwood, which made our national top 50 in our most recent edition of the Price Predictor Index. It's over consecutive quarters, we've seen a very strong and steady uplift in sales activity in Spearwood, where the median price is in the mid 400,000s. A lot of the suburbs of this particular local government area do have median prices somewhere in the 400,000s. In that category, we've got at Spearwood, as I mentioned, South Lake, Hamilton Hill, Coolbellup, and then a little bit more expensive median prices for houses in the 500,000s, other suburbs like Atwell, Auburn Grove, Bibra Lake, Munster, Success, Ingebup, and others. And then towards the more upmarket end of the market, you've got suburbs close to the water, such as Coogee and North Coogee, where the pricing is obviously a little bit higher, in fact, a lot higher. Another characteristic of this market is that we are starting to see the first signs of a return to price growth. Some of those suburbs have got median prices that are higher than they were 12 months ago. That's not something you can say about a lot of suburbs in Perth just yet. The top end of the market has shown some decent price growth in the last 12 months, but this is more of a lower to middle market area, most of these suburbs, and some of them have showing the first signs of returning to growth in their median prices, just 2 or 3 or 4% at this stage, but it's the beginning of something. Vacancy rates have been an issue in Perth for a while. The postcodes that cover this particular local government area, most of them have got vacancy rates. You would like your vacancy rates as investors to be below 3% to be comfortable. And most of these postcodes are somewhere between 3 and 4% at this stage, which is fairly common in Perth. We've still got vacancy rates a little bit higher than, but the trend that we've seen over the last 1 to 2 years is steadily downwards. So we expect to see ongoing improvement in the vacancy rate figures for the rest of this year and into next year. So uplift in sales activity, vacancy rate starting to get close to that 3% comfort zone, and the first signs of a return to price growth in some of the suburbs of the City of Cockburn. What's coming up in its future, that's an important part of the location reports that we construct on areas like this. And there's some very big projects underway or soon to happen impacting on this area. The Shoreline project in North Coogee is a $5 billion project, which is underway, but it's, excuse me again, obviously I've got a cold, over 15 or 20 years. This is an evolving project, which ultimately is going to create something like 5,000 dwellings over time. Then you've got the Port Coogee Marina development, a $2 billion project, which is underway. All sorts of components of that, residential, retail, commercial, 300-berth marina. It's going to ultimately house, according to our information, about 4,000 residents. So that's a big project that's happening in this region as well. And then you've got the Metronet project, $3.5 billion project to improve and extend rail links, and that link's going to include 3 new stations within the local government area of Cockburn. So infrastructure happening, major new developments, lots of big jobs nodes, affordable real estate, signs of growth. They're all reasons why we have decided to focus on the City of Cockburn in metropolitan Perth as a place which we think is worthy of attention by property investors looking to the future as part of, within the context of a Perth property market that's now entering a recovery phase. So one that's worth considering for all sorts of reasons, including relative affordability. So City of Cockburn, a little bit south of Fremantle in the Perth metropolitan area, is our hotspot of the week. And if you'd like to find out more, you can go to the hotspotting.com.au website and get that particular location report, or some of the other location reports for the areas we rate around Perth, one of the recovering and markets in capital city Australia, and one with good prospects for future growth, we think. Keeping in mind what I said at the beginning about the times in the recent past when the Perth property market has been an absolute national leader on price growth, as well as other important things like population growth. So that's it for now. Terry Ryder from Hotspotting signing off. I will talk to you again soon.